Hello, welcome to the English Language Learning Podcast. Today's episode, we have a reading as always. You can find the link to the reading to the website in the info section on the video on the YouTube channel. Today's reading is about the pandemic. It's a reflection on things that happened during the pandemic. So let's get started. Quickly, a refresher. The intention of the podcast episodes, a potential, is for you to have more exposure and a bigger sample size and more practice listening to actual English. Also, you can practice reading and reading comprehension if you want to follow with me. Again, you can find the link in the info section on the YouTube channel for each video. Todos os vídeos têm um link na secção de mais informação. Todos os vídeos têm you can also practice speaking and writing if you want to, or you can just listen and have listening practice, which usually leads to the most difficult parts of of a language speak a little bit differently than than what you see in a textbook or in a language book or in a audio from a language book CD, right? It's a little bit more difficult to follow and to listen. And spoken English is different than written English. It sounds a lot different because we speak differently than when we're reading. So let's get started. The headline today, I will read it a few times for listening practice. Music, exercise, gray hair, pandemic practices that live on. Music, exercise, gray hair, pandemic practices that live on. This is by Leanne Italie. Leanne Italie. From December 13th, 2022. Today is the 6th of March, 2023. The headline, Music, Exercise, Gray Hair, Pandemic Practices That Live On. Music, exercise, gray hair, pandemic practices that live on. Okay, let's read maybe the first 3 or 4 paragraphs here. From New York, dusting off old musical instruments, appreciating the outdoors more meaningfully, dumping the hair dye, and letting the gray fly forever. The pandemic disrupted our traditions, practices, and pursuits, how we mark milestones, what we do with our time, what's important in routines. It replaced old with new. A kind of new that just might stick. Nearly 3 years after the World Health Organization declared the deadly spread of COVID-19 a pandemic, there's plenty of old life mixed with new. And, yes, the latter includes a whole lot of Zooming still going on among families, colleagues, and friends near and far. Here's a look at pandemic passions that for some are here to stay. Cut. End. That's it. I'm not reading anymore. There's a lot more in this article. It's very interesting. We will talk about some of the things inside, but we will not read anymore. We're done with our reading bit. Again, if you don't know what I'm reading, you can find the link in the info section on YouTube, on the YouTube channel. You can also Google the headline that I read. Music, exercise, gray hair, pandemic practices that live on. Coming up next, we will review the English from the reading. So If that was too easy, the English was too easy, maybe skip the next section, the next 5 or 10 minutes, and go to the end, the final segment, which will have questions and conversation about the theme or topic of the reading. So again, the headline: music, exercise, gray hair, pandemic practices that live on. Coming up next, all things English, a review. Excuse me, a review of the English from this reading. Music, exercise, gray hair, pandemic practices that live on. We did a short reading from apnews.com by Leanne Natali. I just read you the headline again. Music, exercise, gray hair, pandemic practices that live on. Reminder that if the speaking is too fast, you can always, I think, on your cellular device, on your cell phone, you can slow down the velocidade, the velocity of what you're listening to. And if it's still too difficult, you can go back and listen to it again. There's no shame in listening to things more than once. I'm reading books now, short books, but I'm reading books again and again in Portuguese because every time I read the same content, I notice something that I did not notice before, because that's how comprehension works, right? Okay, live on. Well, gray, Gray. It's not black, it's not white, it's gray. What is that, gris? That is Spanish, I think. Cinza, right? Cinza as a color. So music, exercise, and hair, de cor cinza. Pandemic practices or activities that live on. Live on. To live on. When something lives on. This is a phrasal verb for when something continues, when something creates a legacy that continues after the time from its start or its initial moment, right? So rock and roll lives on. It started in the 50s, and it still goes today. Someone is cleaning the bathroom or something on top of me. What else? Polo shirts live on. So live on, continues. Sobreviver. Let me check again. Let's see what live on. And I don't think I use Google Translate for that translation. So I could be wrong. To live, not to love on. To live on. Para viver. I think sobreviver, right? Or continuar. Practices que continua depois da pandemia. To dust off something. This is the first two words of the first sentence. Dusting off. It's a phrasal verb. Dusting off old musical instruments. To dust something off. Let's just look at the word dust. D-U-S-T. Po. Think of your cleaning, right? And you... because of the powder, the dust everywhere. That's the dirt, right? The little tiny microscopic pieces of dirt. In English, we don't say po or powder. We say dust. So dust off, the phrasal verb, O-F-F, as opposed to of, right? Different preposition there. Dust off something. To dust off something is to take off the dust. To limpar o pó. To clean it, something that is old, something that you haven't touched in a long time, right? What collects dust? Pó. O que colhe pó? O que fica com pó? Things that you haven't used in a long time. So dusting off old musical instruments is cleaning, or using rather, things that instruments to make music, which more easily is called musical instruments. Using them again in the pandemic. Appreciating the outdoors more meaningfully. Apreciando ficar fora da casa com mais significativo, right? More meaningfully. I know this word is probably common and you hear it a lot, but it's easy to forget the meaning of the word meaning. What does it mean, right? Um, Meaningfully, significativo. Dumping the hair dye, dumping, to dump, could be descargar. My dad's favorite word for taking a shit, taking a dump. But it also means jogar fora, right? Jogar fora, jogar no lixo, to dump something. So hair dye is the color that makes your hair change color. The actual liquid, o líquido que muda a cor do cabelo, ou roupa, alguma coisa, right? So jogando cor de cabelo fora no lixo e deixando o cinza fica para sempre. So dumping the hair dye, letting the gray fly forever. To let something fly forever or let something fly, another phrasal verb, it's to show or physically express something in the open with no reservation, no secrecy. Let it fly. Let the rainbow fly is kind of the new um, change for society, right? Letting people or people who are LGBTQ plus choosing to not hide justifiably because of the resentment from other people, but to not hide, let the rainbow fly, meaning express it, keep it in the open, not in the closet, not hiding. So letting the gray fly forever. I understand this to mean, hey, you're getting older. You got gray hair. Don't dye it. Don't change the color. Fuck it. Let it go. You got gray hair. Whatever. It looks good. Um, a pursuit. The pandemic disrupted our traditions, practices, and pursuits. Pursuits. The verb means to perseguir, to go after something, to try and go get something. The noun, in this case it's a noun, practices and pursuits were disrupted by the pandemic. So goals, objectives, perseguições, as buscas, as procuras, things that you want. How we mark milestones. Okay, milestones. We've talked about this in a previous episode, but milestones are marcas importantes, right? Things are important moments. Marco importante, sucesso marcante, an achievement, a feat, a success that's significant as a milestone. Routines, rotinas. We haven't talked about routines, but this word is very similar. A reminder, routines, present simple, always. Things you do and repeat, present simple. It replaced old with new, the pandemic. The pandemic replaced old with new, a kind of new, un tipo de novo, un tipo de novidade, that just might stick. Que pode ficar, que pode grudar, que pode ficar, right? To stay, que pode durar. If we're talking about a habit or routine or activity or practice that will stick, it means that it will last. Que vai durar, que vai ficar. It's not going away. It's not temporary. So this article, right, we only read 3 paragraphs. The rest of it is about things and activities that people did during the pandemic, and some of them they're still doing. They haven't stopped. We haven't stopped. 3 years after the World Health Organization declared the deadly spread or espalha fatal do Covid, there's plenty of old life mixed with a new. Plenty. Is that a mosquito? Please God, no. No. Old with the new. So plenty, and I did not pronounce it plenty when I was reading. We've talked about NT pronunciations before. This is another plenty. Americans almost never aspirate or blow out air when we pronounce a T in the middle of a word. It's very uncommon. So Plenty, Plenty, which means bastante, more than enough, a lot of, or lots of, variedade, muito. Plenty is pronounced plenty. There's plenty of old life mixed with the new. And yes, the latter, Latter, not ladder, not escalera or ladera. Same pronunciation, ladder. Different, it's not two T's, right? It's two D's for ladera. But ladder, Latt, again, we don't pronounce it latter in American English. In other dialects, yes, that is correct. Why am I teaching you my way? Well, because I'm speaking. And there's 350 million of me who speak this way. It's a lot of people. But there is another way to pronounce these things, right? Latter or latte. There's my limited British accent for one word and one consonant sound, two T's. The latter includes a whole lot of zooming. So Latter, we use this word to refer, para referir, to refer to a previously stated list of something. In the last sentence, they said, plenty of old mixed with the new. So there's a list of two things, old and new. And there's an order, tem ordem no que eles listaram essas coisas, né? Foi primeiro, foi segundo. Foi mais no passado, foi mais recentemente. Para o que está mais recentemente, a segunda na lista, usamos o latter, ou que significa latter, mais recentemente. But we use this word latter to refer directly to a previous sentence and to refer specifically to number 2 on the list. So there's plenty of old mixed with the new. And yes, the new, or the latter, includes lots of Zoom calls with family, friends, colleagues, people who are close, people who are far. That is it. There's nothing else here from the English that I wanted to look at. Maybe you disagree. Maybe you have more doubts or confusion or questions, maybe about pronunciation, maybe about grammar, maybe about vocabulary, conjugation or something. So please, if you have more doubts, I would love to do more. I just need your help to tell me what it is you are confused by. So leave a comment or leave something, a message somewhere, and I can add more or reply directly to you. Coming up next, questions and conversation about pandemic activities, pandemic legacies, and anything that you might do in the next pandemic. And yeah, there probably will be another one in our lifetime. So coming up next, questions and conversation. Music, exercise, gray hair, pandemic practices that live on or continue or survive the pandemic. We did a reading, 3 paragraphs. If you have no idea what I'm talking about, please look in the info section for this video on YouTube, and you will see a link kind of at the bottom, and you can find exactly what I'm reading or what I read. And there's lots more, right, that I did not read from this article. You could read it if you want to, if you have time. Or you can listen now, and we will ask questions and have some short conversation about the topic, pandemic legacies. The article mentioned, I'm not going to go into lots of detail about the rest, os restos do artículo, but they talked about music, people playing music, people playing instruments that they had in their closet for 20 years, people trying new instruments, people who never played an instrument saying, fuck it, I'm going to learn how to play guitar. It's the pandemic, baby. Exercise. peloton, right? I don't know if it's the same in Portuguese, but peloton, the fixed, bicycle classes. I've never done this, but it's apparently a massive trend in the U.S. right now, to go to class, to do peloton in the academia, in the gym, to do it at home with like a YouTube or TikTok. Now I sound old, but someone virtually, right, doing Peloton classes with special shoes. People running, people trying to do marathon type activities, people who have bicycles that they que faz tempão que não usaram, que vai usar de novo, that they haven't used in a long time, that are going to use it again. Um, People who, I can't believe I'm reading this. People who have figured out or mapped or planned where the best cats are in the neighborhood to go visit. I'm not joking. This is actually in the article, and to go walking, like a cat tour, uma expedição de encontrar e conhecer os gatos no bairro. That actually sounds okay. And being friendly with neighbors, people sitting on the sidewalk. Again, these are in residential neighborhoods, very different than Sao Paulo, right, where I live. People having outdoor movie nights, sitting in chairs, with a projector on someone's garage. So lots of things that they mentioned that happened in the pandemic. More gardening, going outside, growing things, reconnecting with nature, even if it's in your backyard or in a community park. And then grooming, right? People doing different things with their hair, with their body. Some people who were coloring their hair to look younger, deciding, no, I'm going to accept, I'm going to accept the age in my appearance, with hair con cor cinza. People playing sports. Again, you can't really play basketball and those things, but tennis would be one that they mentioned. Golf, although golf, just not for me. But it seems like an expensive sport. Zoom meetings, right? All of the virtual things that people podcasts. Everyone's got a fucking podcast now. All the podcasts and virtual content choices that you have, buying things on applications or aplicativos, fazendo as compras no aplicativo sem sair da casa, porque está trabalhando na casa. So, my first question to you from the article, or regarding, about the topic, music, exercise, gray hair, pandemic practices that live on. My first question to you: did you change at all during the pandemic? If yes, how so? If no, also, how? How did you not change during a pandemic? Se você mudou em algum jeito durante a pandemia, e se sim, como? E se não, também como? Como você não mudou nesse tempo tão estranho, diferente? Did I change at all during the pandemic? I became a father, on January 26th, 2020. So here in Brazil. So did I change? Yes. I changed a shit ton, a lot. I changed plenty during the pandemic, but how much was because of the pandemic and how much was because I became a daddy, a new father of a little girl. It's very difficult, but trying to think about just the pandemic, how did I change? Virtual classes, right? All my classes are virtual now. I used to take the bus to the metro to the bus to the train to the metro to the bus every day, going to my classes. I loved it, actually. I miss that. Eu sinto falta dessa época, because I get to see the city. I like being around people. I don't necessarily love talking to people, but I love being around the action, the people in an urban area. That's why I came to Sao Paulo. So I missed that. Everything became virtual. What else during the pandemic? Um, I think I became. That's difficult. I'm not sure how else I changed in this pandemic. It's hard to review. If I think of anything else, I'll throw it back into another question. So number two, what habits did you pick up more or less because of the pandemic? What habits did you pick up more or less because of the pandemic? Quais hábitos você pegou mais ou menos por culpa da pandemia? What habits did you pick up? Pegar. More or less because of the pandemic. Um, they mention here many different things, right? The yoga, the peloton, the practicing music. I think personally for me, I became more involved in listening to podcasts, right? That was something that changed for me. Where podcasting before was something I listened to just in transit, right? Just taking the bus somewhere. In the beginning of the pandemic, I wasn't taking the bus or the train, and so I stopped listening to my podcasts because I didn't have the normal opportunity to listen to my podcast. It was something I did alone, right? Not around other people. So I think the pandemic changed that, where I started listening to podcasts. I had to separate my own time and space to listen to something that no começo da pandemia estava sentindo falta, porque não tive a oportunidade de escutar no metrô ou trem. Todas as aulas viraram virtuais. Então eu tive que aprender como conseguir tempo pessoal para mim mesmo numa casa com mãe do bebezinho, para escutar essas coisas. Any other habits? I did not start making bread. Uh, I exercise at home, so for me, that was normal. Before the pandemic, I exercised at home. During the pandemic, the same thing, and after the pandemic, the same. So that didn't change. Our next question, kind of the same. What is the pandemic's legacy in your personal life? What parts of the pandemic will live on for you? O que é a legacia da pandemia na sua vida pessoal? Quais partes da pandemia vai continuar, vai viver, vai sobreviver para frente para você? And I don't just mean habits or activities or practices. Did you get sick during the pandemic? Did you get COVID? Do you have any health related things? Did you decide to become healthier because COVID was impacting and affecting people who physically were not in great health already for whatever reason? I'm not passing judgment. I'm not judging people who are larger or heavier, but that was a correlation with death during COVID. So, did you stop smoking? Did you change your diet? Did you learn to appreciate your family more because someone got sick and shit, you thought they were gonna die? Or you were always scared that you could kill someone? Are you more careful when you're sick? Do you tell your boss, hey, I'm not coming in today because I'm sick and I don't want to spread it? I know in American culture that's not common before the pandemic. I don't live in the U.S. anymore, so maybe that's still the same. But maybe people are thinking, you know what, fuck this. I'm sick. I'm staying home. So, what is the legacy of the pandemic for you in your personal or family life? My baby, she's not a baby anymore. Pandemic, she was a baby. Now she's not. She lost her grampy, not my father, but her mother's father, lost in the pandemic. That it will always have an imprint on our life, right? So, what is the legacy of the pandemic for you? What will live on? And if you want to answer with activities too, you can do that. Among your friends and family, so not you, but other people, people you know. This is not about you. This is about friends and family. Entre os seus amigos y familia. Among your friends and family, what changes did you notice in their traditions, in their practices, in their routines, in their pursuits, in their use of free time? Entre os seus amigos e família, quais mudanças você observou ou anotou nos seus tradições, nos seus práticas ou atividades, nos seus rotinas, nos seus buscas, nas suas buscas, nos seus usos de tempo livre? Did you notice your friends or family do anything strange? Did you have a husband or wife that started baking bread every day, or who's who did you that you know I forgot one, right, listening to virtual concerts and shows? Did you did anybody have more anxiety or anything, right, in their life? Did you notice anyone start to lose their mind a little bit? Did you notice anyone's routine change a lot in your life? So the other questions are basically the same, but this is not about you. This is about your friends and your family. How did the pandemic affect or change their traditions or their practices, their routines? Did anyone lose a job because of the pandemic? Did anyone get a job during the pandemic? So, what about your friends and family? What changes did you notice in their traditions, in their practices, in their routines, in their pursuits or buscas, perseguições, in their use of free time? Um, do I have any friends who started baking? I don't think so. A lot of my friends is hard to talk to now because they're so far, and if you don't see someone, it's difficult to always be on the phone in a relationship. So I know I did have one friend who got a job during the pandemic for PlayStation, and he was excited to go work in the PlayStation office in San Diego. But no, they don't do that because of the pandemic. Anyone who got a new job and they never met their new boss or coworkers, companheiros de trabalho, pessoalmente, right? I know a lot of people who got a job and they've never physically met the people they work with because it's all virtual. Maybe now that's different. Uh, Next question. Do you think the pandemic changed us, humans, Brazilians, Paulistanos, Americans, people, humanity? Do you think the pandemic changed us forever? Or do you think all of this will be more or less esquecido, forgotten, right? I don't pronounce those T's. Forgotten or left behind, deixado no passado, numa década, in a decade. So again, do you think the pandemic changed us forever? Or do you think all of this will be more or less forgotten and left behind in the past, in 5 or 10 years? I think it's difficult. The world moves very fast, right? Controversies and scandals that were big 5 years ago are not even would not even be a news story. There's a war happening now too, and that's affecting the way things get processed. But I do believe the pandemic changed us forever in I think more negative ways than positive. Um, I think some people viewed the pandemic as a moment to not believe in science as a almost as an excuse to say, look at all the conspiracies that I've heard before. Now they all must be true. I think we got dumber in the pandemic. I think that is what is one of the legacies of this time. Um, and there was a slight disruption. Got a phone call from my baby mama. baby's got hand, foot, mouth disease. Ooh. Okay, where were we? We were in our questions. I'm a little bit discombobulated. We did the legacy. Oh, will it change us forever? Or will this kind of be forgotten in a decade? And I was saying, I think people um, found lots of support for being idiots about science and doing your own research. Jesus Christ, I think that has become a much stronger sentiment from people who are ignorant, right? Doing your own research because they don't understand actual research and medicine and how things change and data is slow, right? Pesquisa and data is slow, and doctors do not make big conclusions that are permanent. When you get more information, their recommendations change, and their recommendations, but they change. So you can't be surprised. Also, public health is different than individual health, right? When a doctor tells you in the beginning of a pandemic, maybe we're not going to tell everybody to go buy a mask. Talvez não vamos dizer para todo mundo comprar máscaras, porque os médicos não têm máscaras ainda. Então vamos esperar até os médicos nos hospitais podem conseguir. E depois, quando está produzindo mais, when they're producing more, then we'll tell people to go get masks. So I think people just got dumber, but I think it was dumb people who got dumber. They got more confidence in, hey, there are other people like me who are doubting the science and the industry of medicine, not the industry, but the people who are actually studying medicine. So other things, I think. I think we all got a little bit more human. We realized that yes, anybody can die from something invisible, and you can believe that it's not real. You can believe that the pandemic and the virus is not real. It's a conspiracy, but it will kill you. And I think that is something that kind of shook or got some people to pay attention that, yeah, people are dying. And that was not an illusion, that was real. Next question. Do you have any fear of another pandemic or even an evolving pandemic? So, você tem algum medo de outro pandemia ou até pandemia que ainda existe, que está evoluindo? That's evolving. Do you have? Se você tem, right? Present simple question. Do you have? Yes or no? Do you have any fear of another pandemic or even an evolving pandemic? I have fear of another pandemic, not an evolving pandemic, because it seems like COVID is changing, but the vaccines are sufficient. Another pandemic? Yes, I have fear of another pandemic because the humans we did okay, but there were a lot of people who just decided we're okay with lots of people dying. We're gonna make this a political topic about freedom and liberty and fuck mask wearing. You can't make me wear a mask. So COVID was deadly, but it wasn't that deadly compared to other viruses in human history. And if we have a worse or more deadly virus mais fatal, and people just don't want to do simple, easy things to protect other people, oof. So back to the last question. Did it change us forever? Yes. I don't trust anyone anymore. I don't trust anyone to actually care about my health because a lot of people, even friends, were refusing to wear masks. Christian people, right? Good Christians were refusing to do simple, easy things to help their neighbors. That has changed me forever. Next question. What will you do differently in the next pandemic? Maybe I will bake bread. I don't know. maybe in the next pandemic, I will. What will I do in the next pandemic? Anything different? I don't think it'll be routines. I think I will be a little bit less scared. I think I will be a little bit less scared than this pandemic because this was our first pandemic in a long time. So I think I'll be a little bit less scared and a little bit more cynical of people because of the way they behaved in the last one. But what will you do differently? Will you try any new things? Will you, hey, maybe I will take the opportunity to get in better shape or find a job where I can work from home? Because I didn't do that in this pandemic. I still work in an office or somewhere. Final question. When you see, when you hear, or when you read the word pandemic, what do you think about? When you see, hear, or read the word pandemic, what do you think about? What do you think about? Quando você lê, ouvir, ou ler, ouvir, ou ler, ou ouvir a palavra pandemia, do que você pensa? What do you think about? Do que você pensa? When I hear the word pandemic, I think about misinformation. It's just the first thing that comes to my mind, misinformation. I think about death. I think about Zoom. Lots of Zoom, man. Oh my God. I used to say Skype. Skype was like Google, right? You say, I'm going to do a Skype call. If it's FaceTime, you say Skype anyway. Now it's Zoom. Zoom has dominated the idea of doing something virtually. It's a Zoom now. That's what I think about. I think about masks too. I think about masks. So when you see, hear, or read the word pandemic, what do you think about? That is all. You can write down answers to these questions and send them to me on an email. You can write them in answers to any of these questions in the comment section on YouTube. You can think about them in English. You can voice record your answers on your cell phone or send them to a friend on WhatsApp. You send them to me if somehow you've had my number. But these are for you to start to think about and hear questions in English, in natural English, not pre-recorded questions, but naturally sounding questions, and think about them in English. Inscrever, subscribe, like, dislike is okay too. The algorithm, I think, accepts all likes or dislikes. Leave a comment, but inscrever, subscribe to the YouTube page. It's helpful for me to get more of you to listen to me. Tell your friends about it. Tell your friends about me. But really, tell your friends, your family. If you have friends who are learning or practicing English, hey, do them a favor. Do me a favor too, and spread the word. Espalha a palavra. Thanks for listening, and